Hello everybody and welcome. It is Gahano Sudupani here for the Advent Essay, a timely voice indeed, and I'm here with more biblical analysis because I have found more biblical support for addressing the current challenges we have in this country today. So I know there's been a lot that happened between the previous video and this video. I can't keep up. There's a lot happening way too quickly, too many developments. And right now, all I know is we are all gun experts in the country. We all have some form of, short course into weapons, which is interesting, right? So my interest, maybe before I start, is to just look at a wrap of what happened since the last video, where we had a testimony from the former police minister, and it was quite funny, to be honest, and charismatic is the word I'd use. The funny thing is, there seems to not be a problem being friends with people implicated in large corruption and even criminal matters. There seems to be a comfortability, to blessed is the man who walketh not in the way of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. So this culture doesn't really reflect blessed men and women in that regard, So there's an enjoyment, of the company of the wicked. There's just a laissez-faire approach to how you interact with the wicked, as it were. So that was interesting, and then we move on to some of the testimonies we've heard from the anonymous witnesses, B and C, who really stood bravely at the face of cold threats to their lives, which is something that's extraordinary. And it just showed you that there are some people out there who have it in them, to carry truth, as it were. And then speaking on that, later on, the former president Thabo Mbeki made a few remarks on his podcast, or I don't know if it's his podcast, but he was being interviewed, and he made a remark about truth. And this is where Christianity and biblical scholars should tap in. He made a remark about truth to say that the country has sort of shifted in its culture of telling the truth as it is when it happens. And he made allusions to this idea that if we have a situation where ongoing falsifications keep taking place and people, keep trying to be dishonest with themselves, with the state, with other people, members of their family even, we're running into a dangerous hole that we can't dig ourselves out of, because a country that is not based on truth is fundamentally flawed. And then he went on to speak about some of how the Constitution was formed and how it was formed to embrace the idea that the leaders who form it can also be wrong. So they should make mechanisms that hold them to a higher standard than themselves when things go wrong. And things have definitely gone wrong, which is a matter that is still ongoing. So just those reflections, giving you just hints of the areas of biblical analysis I could see there, where leaders are realizing now that there is perhaps a wave of truth in a way that we've never appreciated before in the country since times past. And this wave is what we need to basically galvanize the country in the right direction. So that's the meat of it, And then we got into weapons. And today, fortunately, I have some juicy biblical analysis on weapons. Just particularly fascinated by the testimony of the two ballistics experts who basically described the errors that were contained in that ballistics report, which looked like an attempt to hide something, really. You can't make that many mistakes and miss out on that much in terms of linkages to other crimes. And so I want to introduce you to 1 Samuel chapter 13. 1 Samuel chapter 13, around verse 19. The Bible says, "Now there was no smith found throughout the land of Israel. For the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make them swords and spears." So a smith is a person who deals with iron, and they make weapons. In the olden days, it is said that the Hebrews did not have a resident, ironsmith to make weapons. And the Philistines gate-kept this privilege and kept it to themselves. They made themselves, iron machinery and weaponry to the exclusion of the Israelites. Why this is fascinating is the fact that you can somehow see that in the way the weapons were being handled, all right? You're sort of seeing the same weapons being used for the same high-level assassination, situation, and these are rotated among the same class of individuals. They are rotated obviously for nefarious intentions, and it's fascinating how Philistines would gatekeep, all of this to themselves, to the point where they even buy or influence the person doing ballistics, and they have that person in their corner. That's the person I would call the smith in this case. In this modern era, of course, people who make guns are not called smiths, but the person who engineered the disappearance of information is ultimately the smith of all time, who worked with the initial ballistics report and made evidence disappear, because the cartridges would tell you that this thing was there, it was there, it was there, it was there. So, Philistines and gatekeeping weaponry. Be very, be aware, be aware. And then the Bible says that the Israelites then took unusual weapons to war, like forks and axes and stems and gourds, to go and fight in a very unequal battle. And so what we find is that in trying to catch up with all the things that the criminal elements have been doing in the country, we're basically fighting with axes, with forks, and with gourds, to a very large extent going nowhere slowly in terms of the detail to which we're investigating these things. And it would seem that some are even getting away. I mean, some people are out on bail. That was big news last week. Some people were denied bail for obvious reasons, but you can't have a situation where in the same court one is denied, one is, there's something wrong. There's something wrong with the system. And so the silver lining here in this text is that only Jonathan and King Saul were said to have had weapons made of iron. And this is interesting because it's only the son of the king and the king himself who had weapons of iron. So when you associate yourself with royalty, you will have access to weapons of iron. And by royalty, I mean really heavenly royalty. You will have access to, weapons. You will have access to weapons to fight the spiritual battles we face in this world, where you need the sword of the spirit, and the shield of faith, to make sure that you are able to protect yourself from all these wiles of the evil one. And so this is the atmosphere we find ourselves in. We find ourselves sitting, as it were, if we are not attached to the king, sitting ducks, with nothing to defend ourselves with should this country go awry. That the big indictment on us, beloved, is that we should take up the adoption, the adoption we've been given into the royal family of Christ, so that we can access weapons of the Spirit and fight these things using truth, faith, and all the other armor of the Spirit listed in Ephesians chapter 6. So I just wanted to bring this across to the Christian and biblical community to understand that these matters are addressed in some biblical stories that you might not have been aware of. I mean, it's bizarre to think that nations as far back as the biblical times were fighting unequal wars, closer to colonial times where, the English were using guns and the Zulu were using, weapons of iron. And even that was an unequal battle. And now we're facing an unequal battle where drug cartels literally have enough weaponry, clearly, to take out, key people in society. And if we're not careful, we might be sitting ducks in a Colombia situation, right? And you hear about unguarded ports of nice now. You hear about vessels that just dock at Durban, a very busy port, and the goal of people breaking into safes themselves. It's just bizarre, And the amount of lying, I just want to address this, the amount of lying that takes place in the parliaments when testimony is given. It's astronomical, because today we got a clear view of the events, of the letter, apparently, that, where some guy was supposed to consult, he didn't even consult, his own people. He didn't even consult the people that work with him in his own office. So it's just bizarre to me that we have people who can, avoid the truth. There's a difference between trying to be a person who tells the truth, and a person who has made it their life's mission to avoid the truth at all costs. And that's beyond us. That's beyond us, beloved. So let's take up some weaponry of the Spirit. Please continue to pray for your nation, because it is God who has put you in this nation for such a time as this. If you don't pray, no one else will. And keep on having conversations that keep you accountable. Keep on having conversations that keep others around you accountable. Obviously, you love people, you expect the best from them, but I think Parliament is a good way of just saying, hey, let's check in, how are we doing, So that's my analysis for today. So I hope you enjoy it, and if you wouldn't mind, just give this video a subscribe, give it a like, give it a comment, tell me what you think about the bizarre nature of the Philistines, which I'm gonna put in the pool of the drug cartels, and the rest of Israel, which is, the sitting ducks who have no defense at all, because the people who are supposed to defend us are in bed with the Philistines. All right, everybody, thank you. Have a good one, and Godspeed.